Ah, yes, the sounds of ABBA and their song called Gimme Gimme Gimme, featuring that flute and string combination along with that funky synth bass. This is Mark from My Keys to Music. Thanks for joining me on this video. Let's take a look at how this song comes to be here on the Nord Stage 3. Okay, for those of you who have been following me on YouTube and in the courses all these many years, you'll probably note that I create maybe 90 to 95% of all the programs you hear from all the keyboards, most of them just from scratch, using my own ears, my own eyes and skills, and all of that. But occasionally we'll pull sounds from the community, great sounds in fact, and in this case these sounds are pulled from the community. They are available on the Nord user forum and you should go check them out. I believe one of the presenters put together a sample for that flute sound, and that sample is from the actual ABBA album, I believe. Then another person came along and used that sample and enhanced it further and made a more complete program where you can play the other parts of the song as well. And you'll just have to read through that post and kind of determine what's their interpretation and the instructions for making it happen, but feel free to download that. I'll be talking briefly about some of these sounds here just so you can get a bird's eye view of what's going on under the hood and how these come together. So the first sound we're going to look at is called ABBA Gimme 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 SW. The SW is for the modulation wheel where we turn the flute on and off. And we are using both panels to do this sound. We have the beginning of the song, actually, if I look on panel A, you'll see I have a control pedal happening and it's adjusting. Obviously, I'm not using my hands here. I'm adjusting it with my foot. So when we start this song, it goes like this. And then as the crescendo builds, you can move your foot up. Now, on the original album, you actually hear a synth also being introduced, sort of modulating and more synth-like and not so much of the strings. But we need all the panel power that we can. We need the panel for the flute part in this particular program. So it would be nice to have another synth layer that we could have that weave in, but for now we're just going to increase the string sound and volume. So start off here and then bring it up. Now, when I played the demo here on the first part of this video, I believe I just had the volume at full just to keep it easier. But technically speaking, I think it was made so that you could make that volume increase with the strings. Now, as the strings are being held, then hold the sustain pedal, so you have your hands free, and then move this up, which will bring in the flute, starting with the right hand of the split here. We have the strings playing across the entire keyboard on panel A. And then on panel B, we have the flute just playing up to this split. Together. And that's what makes that, obviously, that important intro to this song. Now, along with that intro, you do hear the synth bass. But there are simply no panels to go around to do all three of those, at least not with this program. And you'll see here in a second where we kind of get around that limitation on the next program. So as we finish that flute part, we then go to the second program. You'll see me switch to the second program. It's basically got the same name, ABBA Gimme 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 -W. And you'll want to bring this down because we don't want, there's a flute on this one too. We want to bring it down so all we hear is strings. And then we do this. And then we have the bass. Now I'm not playing that bass part exactly right. And there's technically a slap bass guitar playing along with that synth. So you'll just have to listen in. If you want it to be really authentic and accurate, you'll have to imitate that here with your left hand, I suppose. But I'm doing the best that I can here with my left hand, trying to keep everything together. All right, so we have that part. And then there is a part where the piano comes in. So we can add the piano. And that's, we have this. really does lend itself to a Nord Stage 3 because you need a couple of synths and the piano happening at the same time at selected spots. It's really hard to do that with a single synthesizer. Even if that synthesizer has a bunch of layers, it typically doesn't have a piano. So that's, another reason why people say, why would you need a stage keyboard with a synth? Well, here's a song. Or why would you need a synth with a piano? Well, here's a song again. A perfect example why you need both sometimes. So that's nice to introduce that white grand there, and you can turn that on and off as needed. Now, I do turn the piano off, and then that's it for the demo that I show you at the beginning part of the video. But if you were to continue with the song, you'd have this sort of thing happening in your left hand when you play, and then introduce the flute again by moving this modulation wheel up, and then it sounds like this. Oops. Now that's quite a bit of coordination there, and I haven't rehearsed that to get that perfectly, but this is a great example of why you probably need two keyboards and two keyboard players for this, just to get the dynamics of it all and to get it accurate. So yeah, you might ask yourself, now wait a minute, I hear strings, I hear bass, synth bass, and I hear the flute. Isn't that 3 synths happening when we only have 2 layers? How are we getting away with that? And that's probably an important thing to talk about right now. We're getting away with that because on panel A, we do have that string sound. But as I move the wheel up, we're using an oscillator configuration that introduces a simple square waveform, 12, an octave difference from the first, an octave higher. And here I'm mixing it using the morph capability so that the wheel can morph this oscillator control. But it's doing it here with the wheel because it's easier to get to than perhaps this knob. And now I have the strings and the flute happening. But it wasn't the original sample flute that you heard on the previous sound. That sounded like this. A little bit more authentic because we're using an actual sample, and then we have the ability to have those strings. It's a dedicated panel for the flute for that one. Whereas this sound is a little bit more, it's basically cheating in a sense, or it's a workaround. But that allows you to have all 3 sounds happening at the same time. Probably not as effective, but what are you going to do? There's a give and take when it comes to these really complicated 80s songs that have, a ton of synth tracks, and you're the lone keyboard player and you have to figure it all out. Like I said, there are so many songs from the 80s that really do require 2 keyboards, 2 keyboardists, multiple keyboards. But nowadays, you can, if you play to a click track, you can pump some of that stuff on a click track, using MainStage or some other Ableton Live, that kind of thing. And then you can just play the main parts live and then have the rest of it pumped in. There's a lot of groups, Rick Beato talks about this, a lot of groups these days that do that, and that's just part of the performance. And as long as they get the highlighted parts played live, I think most people are fine with that. All right, so that's that sound and how it all works. So if you want to download these sounds, I put a link at the description below this video, and you can just go to the Nord user forum and grab these sounds now, read about it a little bit, download them. That's ABBA, Gimme 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 on a Nord Stage 3. We'll talk to you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.